Patrick's Day. I feel very underdressed. I'm wearing a green Jets t-shirt, and Tiki is wearing, how would you even describe what you're wearing?
This is a green, clothish, double-breasted, very nice jacket.
It's such a nice jacket, and he looks so, cuddly. I want to hug you. It looks like you're wearing a blanket.
This is the only green I have in my house. In my closet, I should say.
Well,
I don't have any Jets stuff like you and Rosie.
That's how we roll. That's how we celebrate. Basically, St. Patrick's Day has become Jets Day because the greenest things I have in my household are Jet stuff. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. We got a very busy show today. How the Knicks turned heel on Karl Anthony Towns. We'll address that. We've got injury updates coming out of Yankee camp. We will talk to a WFAN legend, a WFAN icon. But these days, he's just simply known as the voice of the number 2 seed in the West region, the St. John's Red Storm. We're talking about the great John Minko. He will join us at 3 o'clock. And speaking of St. John's, I have a tradition in my household. I watch Selection Sunday with my tablet, okay? And I got a little keyboard. And as they announce the 1 seeds, the 16 seeds, the 8 seeds, the 9 seeds, I write it down on a document. I'm showing it to Tiki right now.
Right.
So this is proof that this is an Evan tradition.
You know you don't need to write it down.
Doesn't matter.
You know that there will be plenty of sites that'll give it to you exactly printed out perfectly.
You're right.
And you can go to a printer and have it on a sheet of paper right in front of you.
You're right, but tradition is tradition. And so last night I sat down. It was probably 10 o'clock at night. I was on DVR because I had business to take care of at Barclays Center, like watching my basketball team screw up a tank. And I got home, and I sat down, and I'm ready for Selection Sunday. And number one, I think we all had this emotion, and I'd be remiss to not bring it up. I miss Greg Gumbel. We all miss Greg Gumbel. It's not the same without Greg Gumbel. And it was a beautiful tribute to start the selection show. And then I start jotting stuff down. I'm like, oh, okay, Auburn, number 1 out of the South region. Let's go. Ooh, North Carolina made it.
Barely.
A lot of people are going to cry, and they're going to bitch and moan. And then at the very end, we finally got to St. John's. And even though you knew and I knew and everybody knew based on their success in the Big East tournament, their success this regular season, that they were going to be a 3 seed or a 2 seed, when I got to write them down as a 2 seed, I had to look at it 5 times because I'm 41 years old, man. I've been around for a while. I've been on this radio station for a while. Never in my wildest dreams or nightmares did I ever think that St. John's would be a 2 seed. That is still the weirdest thing ever. Now, congratulations to all the alum, to all the fans. Congratulations to Rick Pitino. But it got me thinking because for the last decade, St. John's has become an afterthought in this city.
Right.
And a part of why they were an afterthought is people gave up. People just assumed, the way college sports is, the way St. John's is set up, the way the program is, they're never going to be great again. It's never going to be the mid-'80s. And trust me, I raised my hand. I don't remember the mid-'80s. I remember 1999 and 2000, and that was my glory days, at least as a teenager watching them. But never did anyone think they could get back to this. And so as I was sitting there late last night, it kind of hit me that whether we appreciate it or not, this is one of the great New York sports turnarounds we've ever seen.
No, it is. And it's interesting how it happened because I think everybody has an opinion about Rick Pitino, whether or not you know anything about Rick Pitino or you're just kind of a grazer of the news around Rick Pitino. And some people will say, look, he's been amazing in his career. And in fact, he is one of the best coaches, I think, in this generation in college basketball. You've seen it at literally every stop that he's gone to. He produces a winner. And so when he came to St. John's, it was like, man, he's got a tall task. Especially in this world of now NIL, are they going to find the money? And just having some conversations with BT over the years, BT was like, trust me, there's money. It's just never been utilized the right way at St. John's. And so Rick Pitino came here, and last season, it was like everybody expected it to be immediate, but I appreciated his approach because they weren't great. They weren't terrible, but they were just kind of okay. And he didn't hesitate to call them out. Straight up, you guys suck, basically.
Yeah.
And after the season, there were a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Right, guys transferred. He probably kicked some dudes out, whatever.
They stole people from rivals like Kadary Richmond?
Right. He brought guys over from Seton Hall. It's like, hey, why don't you come here? We'll do it better this way.
Right.
By the way, we can pay you. So it's like one of those things where you kind of got to appreciate how he can turn it that quickly just by getting his players and coaching them the right way.
Yeah.
And so I don't care what people's opinions are. This is a bottom line business now. In fact, I was watching Bruce Pearl, Auburn's head coach, on after the tournament. You could just see how happy he was because, like, he's been this close to being kicked out of basketball so many times for cheating, for paying guys. Now you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Right. So it's like it's a free for all in a sense, but it's the good coaches who can get the right players and coach them to be great. And I think that's what Rick Pitino has done.
Well, it shows you that coaching can change everything, and it can change your perception of everything, because I never thought, not that I gave it that much thought, to be honest with you, but I never thought we would live in a world in which when I'm filling out my bracket on Wednesday or Thursday, you have to seriously consider St. John's going to the Final Four, or St. John's winning a national championship. And that all feels foreign. So it got me thinking, like, all right, in the last 25 years, in the last 30 years, has there truly ever been a turnaround like this? And I would say as shocking as this. Because even though when Pitino came in, there was a hope of a turnaround, did we honestly think it would be this? Where they would be a 2 seed with a legitimate chance to win a national championship? Like, think about this for a second, New York sports fans. We are in a drought right now. Now, I understand the Liberty have won, NYCFC has won, but in terms of the major traditional teams in this town, teams that have been around for a long time, we're in the midst of a drought. It is entirely possible that it's not the Yankees who end the drought. It's not the Giants who end the drought. It's not the Knicks who end the drought. It's not even the Rangers who end the drought. It's the Red Storm who end the drought.
Right.
And so I started thinking, all right, last 25, 30 years, is there a turnaround comparable to this? And I came up with 2 really good ones.
Okay.
And I'm going to admit, I raised my hand. The 2 teams and the 2 examples I'm going to use are teams I happen to root for. Okay? Number 1, and I think this is the best comparison, the most spot-on comparison. And I'm wearing the green, the New York Jets in 97 and 98. Hear me out. They were 1-15 under Richie Kotite. They were dead and buried. But then a god came over. That god's name, Bill Parcells. We'll call him Rick Pitino in this case. And the turnaround began with a huge kind of bounce-back season, but not this. They won 9 games.
Right.
They were in a playoff race. He turned them from a 1-win team to a 9-win team. And then the following year, I would say it was this year for St. John's, the Jets are playing in an AFC championship game, and Aaron Glenn reminded you during his press conference, they had a chance to win that game. They had a lead at halftime.
Right.
So the Parcells Jets 96 and 97, 98 is one comp. But I'll tell you the other one, even though people don't care about it, the New Jersey Nets in 2002.
Well, I don't think people will remember it. That's why.
Yeah, they don't remember it or care about it. The Nets lost. And let me just give you these numbers so you can put it in your head. They lost 56 games. 56. They were 26 and 56. And then the following year, they went not just 52 and 30. They were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference.
So what happened between – we know what happened with the Jets. But for the Nets, how do you go from being one of the worst, if not the worst team record-wise in the NBA, to being the number 1 seed? Like, how does that happen?
Jason Kidd. It was one player. It was one trade, and it changed everything. And here's the other reason why it kind of reminds me of St. John's. So one of the things that you'll think about over the next few days, if you're a St. John's fan or if you're just a sports fan in general, is, hey, what are the expectations now for St. John's? This is a team that hasn't won a tournament game in 25 years. Now they are an 18.5-point favorite in their round 1 matchup. And if they get to the second round, they'll also be a favorite. Like, there are huge expectations for them. And I'm a real believer that your performance will change expectations.
Right.
Like, if I sat here in November and I said, hey, T, can you give me 5 minutes? I'd like to mention St. John's. And you said, not really. I do not give you permission. But then I did, and I said, hey, St. John's is going to make the tournament. You would have said, it's a great step in the right direction.
Right. BT's been telling me that for a decade.
Right. If they made the tournament and lost in the first round, I think most people would say, hey, that's a great step forward for Rick Pitino. But now that they're a 2 seed coming off a 30-win season, the expectations are raised. And I remember that's how I felt about the Nets in 2002. You know, you go from 26 wins to 52 wins, you would think you're just happy to be there. When they played in the 1-8 matchup in the very first round against the Pacers and they won in overtime, double overtime, my attitude was, if we don't win this game, this is a disaster.
Right.
Like, I don't care what happened
Your
last year.
expectation has already risen.
Yes.
Just now that you're here, you better earn why you're here.
Absolutely. The same thing with the Jets in 1998. So I think that performance changes your expectations. But those are the two examples that jump out at me because that's how unique what St. John's and Rick Pitino has pulled off truly is, that I don't think there are a lot of comparisons in at least the last 25 or 30 years in New York sports history that can match this kind of turnaround.
Right. I think if we go back to the Giants in 99, the problem was we weren't terrible. Like, we weren't an afterthought. We were 99. We were 7-9. Yeah, I think we were 7-9, and we were 8-8 the year before that. Right. And then the next year we're 12-4 when we go to the Super Bowl. Well, we lose that Super Bowl, but like the turnaround felt amazing. And the difference, I think, common difference in a lot of these conversations is the coach, or it's the head of on top of it. Now, it wasn't Jim Fossil because he was still the head coach, but that 99 to 2000 season, Sean Payton really evolved and came into his own as an offensive coordinator. And our offense, we're doing all this misdirection, these bunch formations and tosses, and Kerry Collins had a career year, but a lot of it was because of the coaching. I think the same thing can be said about the Jets, and certainly, with the Nets, but definitely with the St. John's Red Storm. It's the coaching. Oh, yeah. Right? They're not an offensive juggernaut. In fact, I watched them shoot three-pointers over the weekend, St. John's, and it's just like, eek, that's ugly.
That's not their thing.
That's not your thing. But they frustrate the hell out of you defensively, and eventually, once it gets into crunch time, teams start panicking, and they just start jacking up three-pointers, inefficient shooting, and St. John's gets rebounds and turns in transition, and before you know it, a 3-point game becomes a 20-point game.
And then, by the way, that style of play is slump-proof. That's, I think, what has to give you confidence going into late Thursday night. If you live and die by the three, there's a good chance you're going to die by it.
Right.
If you live and die by effort, defense, rebounding, just tenaciousness, there's a chance that that's slump-proof. So there's a really good chance that this team is going to go on a legitimate run here. I'll tell you a few others that jumped out at me in terms of turnarounds. And I don't think this team gets enough credit because the pandemic was involved.
Right.
And that's the Knicks in 2021. Because the Knicks went through a really dark period after the Melo era in which things were bad. They went through different coaches. They went through the Phil Jackson era. They got rid of Carmelo Anthony, and they missed out not only on the lottery when they didn't win the lottery and end up with Zion Williamson or John Morant, but they missed out on Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And coming out of the pandemic, the expectations were incredibly low. And not only did they make the playoffs, it's one thing to make the playoffs in the NBA, they were a 4 seed. They had home court advantage in the opening round of that postseason. And I think a part of why they're not remembered nearly as much is because of what ended up happening. They lost in the first round. It's like if St. John's lost on Thursday night, I don't know if we'd be talking glowingly about the incredible St. John's turnaround. Fair enough. That's just the reality. It's about what happens next. That Nets team I brought up got to the NBA Finals. So, yeah, they not only got the turnaround to get to the 1 seed, they sealed the deal by going all the way to the NBA Finals. But that Knicks team in 2021, I also think kind of qualifies as this shocking surprise where when you were sitting there, you're like, how the hell did this happen?
What were they the year before, 1920? They were 21-45.
That's right.
Wow.
And the year before that was the absolute tank year.
Yeah, 17-65.
So think about those 2 seasons going into not just making the playoffs, but going into the postseason as a favorite.
Yeah.
As a 4 seed.
And by the way, it falls in line with what we're talking about because that was Fizdale. Those 2 years, 17-win season, 21-win season. You change the coach. You bring in Tom Thibodeau, and the whole philosophy changed, the energy changes, the internal expectation changes, and you make the postseason. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that one because I think about Atlanta.
You think about the loss.
Right, I think about Atlanta beating their tails, and so it doesn't stick in my mind, but it is a dramatic turnaround.
Yeah, I think that proves that for this team, this St. John's team, to have it stick in New York sports history, now they've got to go on a deep run because like the Nets in 2002, like the Knicks in 21, like even the Jets in 98, we can talk about the turnaround all we want, and it is incredible. It's about what happens next. Does that turnaround lead to anything? I think the Mets in 2015 is another decent example because The year prior, they were under 500. And I remember going in at 15, there were expectations for the Mets because they were a young team that was growing, and you could see that they were getting better. You could see it. But did we see World Series? Did we see winning the division?
Well, I mean, hell, think about the Mets from 2 years ago.
Or last year, you mean?
Right. Yeah, from 2 years ago, they were terrible. And then last year,
Right.
they were in the NLCS. And the common denominator, again, is a changing of the coach. Maybe this is why coaches, or at least organizations, think changing your coach or manager in this case changes the fortunes of the franchise.
Well, in this case,
there wasn't a lot of different players.
Right.
But the coach is different. The philosophy is different with David Stearns, obviously. And then Francisco Lindor had a season for seasons. So, I mean, a lot of it is coaching. You can't discount it.
And there's no doubt St. John's as a 2 seed is because Rick Pitino walked into the life of St. John's fans. We'll get to your calls coming up. We got a lot of football to get to, a lot of baseball to get to. We will talk to the great John Minko coming up at 3 o'clock. The toll-free number is 888-808-1019. And something absolutely absurd from Saturday night St. John's victory. We'll get to that coming up next. We are live from the Town Fair Tire Studios, powered by Town Fair Tire. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody.